Philosophy loves that word, being. In fact, it's one of the strangest words in the English language. Probably one of the most commonly used, the word is or to be. Just go through a day one day and tick how many times you use the word is. Probably used more than any other. The first thing that strikes you when you have any encounter with something, microphone, podium, chair, person sitting next to you, meal, lasagna, whatever it was, the first thing that strikes you in any encounter with something is the fact of its existence. It's there. I don't know what it is. I haven't described it yet, haven't made a judgment about it, but it is. It is. It has being. The fact that things are is, if you like, a revelation of their being, of their existence. And you couldn't even know that a thing is unless you encountered that factness of its being. That all sounds, again, rather profound, but just think about it. Think about anything you encounter. You can't even begin to know what it is unless you know that it is. You can't know how it is, what it is, unless you know that it is. And if you don't know that it is, you don't know it. You haven't even seen it, encountered it in any kind of experiential way. That fact about all things that we encounter, thatness to them, that factness to them, that beingness of them, is somehow considered by philosophy to be the very first category of philosophy, the very first category of our activity as human beings and the activity of our knowing. Before we encounter anything about something, before we know anything about something, we know that it is. And in some ways, that's what unites all that is. That's what unites us to all reality, the fact that we are, the fact that these things exist. Otherwise, you could never encounter them to begin with. Another little item from philosophy that's connected with this is that even though we recognise a common reality called being behind everything that we encounter, we also recognise somehow that there are different kinds of beings. We recognise in our descriptions of things that this thing in front of me, whatever it is different from this thing. They have a different being. They're two individual items. Seem to be different kinds of beings. I guess we can tell that by their structure, by their function, by what they do. But you take that same analysis away from artificial things like this and apply it to natural beings, human beings, animal beings, plant beings, and you recognise that there are different levels of beings, different kinds of beings in the world, a plurality of beings of different kinds. And this caused the philosophers to wonder about a hierarchy of beings. The lowest order, inanimate objects like chemicals and stones. The highest level of the created finite sphere, beings like human beings, angels, knowing beings, loving beings, intelligent beings. John's given me the time. I'm going to just finish up by asking again, what's the use of philosophy? What's it good for? I'd like to stress again that it's important not to press this idea of usefulness too far. I think there is great need for us, as Joseph Pieper, the great German Catholic philosopher, once said, there's great need for us to carve out territories in our society that are specifically set aside for useless activities, like prayer, like worship, like contemplation, like philosophy. Some things are worth doing and knowing for their own sakes, just because, and not as means to other ends. That's how great their value is. They're worth it. Second thing about the goodness or usefulness of philosophy with that qualification in mind. Christianity has always recognised the good of philosophy as a vital mode of reflecting upon, penetrating the realities, the mysteries, and defending the mysteries of our faith. There's a sense in which philosophy helps us to render intelligible to rational human beings the truths that have been given to us by revelation. It allows us to overcome intellectual obstacles to the faith. Some people simply can't come at the truths of revelation because their minds have got obstacles that are in there through false philosophies, false ideas about reality and the world. And sometimes through rational dialogue, through conversation with them, you can help them recognise, and perhaps we can be helped to recognise our own obstacles in our intellects so that we come at a clearer appreciation and a clearer knowledge of the realities of faith. The doing of philosophy is also important for moral reasons as well. Philosophers have always recognised this deep moral sense in each human person, a sense of what's right and what's wrong, a sense of moral repugnance towards great evil, and a sense of great moral attraction towards what is good and beautiful. There is a sense in which moral philosophy aims to ask the question, why do we have this moral sense? What's going on there? And then to raise questions of justice, to raise questions of what is right and wrong at all levels of our social interaction together, as individuals, but as political societies too. For we are not just knowing beings, we are also political and social beings as well. There is a need for philosophy too for us to help develop our faith. We are called to love the Lord our God with all our heart, with all our mind, with all our soul, and all our strength. Philosophy calls upon the exercise of our mind, our reason, to put it to work, otherwise it grows flabby and useless. Philosophy is demanding. Philosophy requires us to think hard. Sometimes it simply asks us to be still and to listen. But either way, it seems to be an essential part of giving our minds over to the realities which God has shown us. And finally, I'd like to add a note by saying that there are limits for philosophy, limits for human reason. We human beings could never come at the realities that have been revealed to us in the preaching of Christ crucified through reason alone. You remember the words of St. Paul, the preaching of the cross is folly to the Gentiles. It's God's wisdom, but it looks like foolishness, unwisdom, naivety to human wisdom. The cross of Jesus Christ and its preaching is like a rock on which human reason can break its head if it exalts itself too high. The prideful human heart, which was that tempted right at the beginning, is also liable to exalt itself too high in matters of philosophy and human wisdom as well. The preaching of the cross of Christ, in which the strength, the wisdom and the glory of God is revealed in weakness, humility and death, is a constant corrective and a constant reminder that human reason is always dependent upon the gift of God. Ultimately, faith is required for us to know and come at what is true, to have access to the true life of God. Philosophy, however, can be a good preparation for faith. It can provide a good foundation for the work of theology and for the work of reflecting upon the faith. In any sense, philosophy invites us to a lifelong quest towards a goal which in the end can only be received as a gift. I think I'll leave it there.